Yo, 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 what is going on, RoK Familia? It is your boy, BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. Quick reminders, right? We got new videos that come out every day, 9 a.m. Eastern, 14 UTC. Along with, if you enjoy the content, make sure you sub, like, ring the notification bell. And of course, if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find a link to that in the pinned comment description right down below. Today's topic is going to be a big one. We're going to really start kind of diving into the working relationship and the dynamic between being an officer slash R4 in game versus being a leader slash R5. And I'm going to show you a scenario that was provided to me by a player from, let's just say, an anonymous kingdom, anonymous player, because they did ask, and we do respect their anonymity. And they wrote me essentially a long post. I copy and pasted and just removed any specific pieces of language that would indicate. And so we're going to read through this. I'm going to give you my feedback on what this person reached out to me about. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to do a little bit of a kind of conclusive dive, if you will, on why having a good working relationship between an officer and a leader is vitally important, right? It's almost tantamount to being a manager at a business and then you working with your team leaders, right, so to speak, or you working with your shift leads, as an example, your captains, and how that can have a direct impact on your employees slash your members, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to apply every single thing that you probably would at a job, but there are similarities, and so it's important to acknowledge these. So let's go ahead and show this off. So again, I'm going to start with the first part here at the top, and then we'll kind of break it down section by section, and I'll kind of do some review for each. So the player starts off reading, and again, as I said, this is copy-pasted from the Discord DMs, just removing any of the sensitive information. It says, "Hi, Boss Nasty. I first wanted to tell you that I really appreciate your videos. They have helped me a lot to improve myself, especially with the game, Rise of Kingdoms. And if you have time, I would like to ask you a question, and I would like you to give me some advice on this. I don't see anyone who can understand and answer me better than you." Oh, well, thank you so much. So I'm happy just to be included in that conversation. So to start, it's a question in relation to the game Rise of Kingdoms. I am currently in an alliance, and I am a titled officer there. I am in this alliance since the beginning, and I'm really faithful to it because the former leader had the same vision as me, and I really love my members sincerely very much. But unfortunately, for personal reasons, he had to leave his position as chief, as lead, and one of the officers took his place. Since then, I noticed that there was no more organization. The current leader often reacts according to his moods and is rather emotionally unstable. First and foremost, this person to me already sounds, and we'll keep reading, but again, sounds as though they genuinely care about the well-being of an alliance. To me, that is an officer that is worth keeping, worth nurturing, worth developing and growing with. This can often happen, I'm sure, and I'm curious, right? For any of you that are in a kingdom, you've been in a kingdom, or I should say been in an alliance, where someone took over that alliance, right? Maybe you thought you could have done a good job. Maybe you even wanted to put your name in the hat. Maybe you did put your name in the hat. And for whatever reason, someone else got selected, and that person just did not do as good of a job as you knew you could, even if it may not have been as good as the previous leader or someone that you looked up to. You saw the trends and things that were going downhill. And I'm curious, for those of you who've had situations like that, let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to read. Then we get to, for example, I am in charge of the organization for AOO, Ark of Osiris. And during our last match, he confessed to me that he deliberately damaged the communication between him and our group. He was in charge of leading the team in attack because a certain R4 had removed his marker during the match and without willing it, so he decided not to communicate with us anymore. And he said to himself that we manage ourselves. We finally lost this battle of 5k points difference. I asked him how he could give me advice to improve the organization of AOO, and that's where he told me, admitted to having deliberately played at 50% instead of 100% because of this marker. My first reaction is that just comes off as unfortunate. I don't think that, my hope is that anyone who goes into AOO, Osiris League, anything where you really have to make a solid effort from everyone together, especially when you're getting on voice for AOOs and OLs, where it's really important people are carving out time or they're making time in their schedule. It's something where, of course, right, everyone would love to win every single match. But that effort, that determination, I hope and would imagine for everyone who participates in these seriously, is there. So yeah, it can be very demotivating and just really, I don't know if I want to say as much as sad, but again, unfortunate. So for something like this, red flag, right? I think where we hear some of the parts, and again, remember, this is just from this person's point of view, right? So that's kind of what we're commenting on, is from their point of view, right? It's that age-old saying where it's, there's your side, there's their side, and then there's the truth, right? Something to that effect. So we're just commenting on, again, this person's POV. So, right, told him that he had made it right. In this case, right, based on what this person's been seeing, the effort they saw, again, if this was admitted to them, these to me are red flags. These are indicators that this person is just not fit or ready at this time to be a lead. Doesn't mean that they never could, but it just means that this person should not potentially either reprioritize and, whether or not they feel they have. Because remember, and this is something we talk about often, is that being a leader of an alliance means you have to understand how much free time you have. The majority of really what people in management do, and this is more emphasized at the leader R5 position, is you are managing the alliance, right? Your first order of business is managing when you get online before you start playing. You have to kind of take care of everything that needs to be taken care of. Addressing, setting up meetings if you need to, contacting people, getting updates, seeing where the current day is playing out, etc. You do all of these things before you ever start playing. Now, if maybe you're just, wicked crazy, like your boy over here, and you can multitask where you're playing and kind of managing at the same time, kudos to you. Not to sit here and toot my own horn, but you just really have to understand how to prioritize your schedule for the day. Because remember, your mindset shouldn't be play first. Your mindset should be manage first. You are a leader, right? You don't see a manager of a store going to the sales floor and taking over someone who's selling shoes. No, they're managing, right? And so, right, they're delegating. And that's probably one of the best scenarios, right, examples to give, right? In almost any line of work, you're not going to see a manager of a store where they're going to spend the entire day, right, and arguably maybe even any part of their day, just depending on the line of work, where they're going to go and do what the employee is doing, right? Whether that's all day and or just a part of the day, again, pending the job. And so that's the big difference. It doesn't mean that they can't do it. It means that they are managing and delegating tasks based on, right, time management and what these people's roles are and responsibilities are in the company, right, or i.e. in your alliance. Okay, so let's go here. They said, player says, I was shocked by his answer. I couldn't help but tell him what I think of his immature attitude. He put his personal interests before those of the group, and what's more, in the middle of the match. Of course, being as respectful as possible, I clearly told him that what I thought. His reaction was that he thinks that I am criticizing him as a leader and that he better leave the alliance. I was overwhelmed and disgusted with such a way of thinking. I'm really lost and I don't know what to do in this group. Our alliance is becoming more and more important because we are now in third position in the ranking of the best alliances, but the organization within the alliance poses a problem for me personally. I have learned a lot about myself recently thanks to all these problems, and I realize that teamwork is very important to me. Having a vision as a group is fundamental for me, and this vision has been flouted somewhere since the arrival of this new leader. A few things stand out to me in this section, right? Is his reaction was that he thinks I am criticizing him as a leader, and that he better leave the alliance. Again, this is usually someone who just has low self-esteem, right? You're kind of lacking that self-awareness to just humble yourself and, again, really be able to clearly and objectively look at things. Right, there's multiple times where if I've ever led an alliance, especially when I started out, where it was a great growing and learning opportunity for me, even though I had what I felt was a good foundation. There's things you learn along the ways. Sometimes it's you figuring it out on your own. Sometimes it's people giving you suggestions, and then sometimes it's people, constructively criticizing you, and then maybe worsely, sometimes it's people that are just bashing you for whatever job they think you are or are not doing. And even when that happens, you can still potentially take some things away from that, just because the delivery that the people are giving you, may not be the most courteous. Does not mean that they still might not have. It just kind of takes the bigger person in a way to sort and sift through those things. So, again, oftentimes, the one thing I'm happy and I'll always be thankful, right, is that even for my time leading, and I should say whenever I am leading an alliance, it is always good to be able to take feedback and suggestions, constructive criticism where it's warranted, and approach it in that objective way where you're really looking at it as, let's actually properly assess this. How have things been going? What's this person suggesting? What have they been noticing? Is this something that can actually be improved and allow for us to do things better, more efficiently in some way, shape, or form? And then act on that. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But always giving those people the time of day, listening to them, and hearing them out. The challenge sometimes is that when you are in a position of management, you may get suggestions and feedback from a bunch of people, whether they're in your alliance or outside of your alliance, right? You might have people in your alliance talking to other players in other alliances, and then they'll come and give you some feedback, and you're just over here kind of somewhat flabbergasted on, how they know these things, or, they're making a suggestion, where clearly they don't have all the facts or they don't know everything, and they're just kind of hearing bits and pieces secondhand. I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. I'm also curious for anyone that's ever ran into that situation before. And so the idea is that if you're someone who's giving feedback, and this is just good general advice, do not go into that conversation assuming that the piece of feedback you're giving is absolutely right, and then on top of that it should automatically result in something being changed, right? Because remember, everyone can go into giving feedback believing that their piece of feedback is the winning piece of feedback. It does not necessarily mean that it is. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the fact is that just as much as a leader and or officer should be open when hearing these things, the person who's delivering it should be open as well. Right? Because again, it doesn't mean that we're just going to all be Jim Carrey yes men, and we're going to say yes to everything. Right? So there has to be some type of filtering system. But the people that are doing the filtering also, right, and here's that asterisk, have to be able to sift through that and appropriately filter things with an objective view that's unbiased. Right? And so when you think about this individual, right, the way that this player is presenting their leader, it does not seem that is the case, which is another red flag. Right? And then we have... right, obviously with the vision that he has for the group, and that's kind of been changed again, probably because there's a new leader. And this is something really interesting, right? Let me blow your brains away here. How many times do you think a leader will vet properly their predecessor or someone who's going to take over for them? Rarely at all is the answer. And what I mean by that is, let's say I'm leading an alliance, and I abruptly have to just leave, or I transfer leadership because something happened. In order for someone to be able to take over as lead, it can't just be someone who, talks a lot in chat, or, they're helping out a lot of people, or an officer that's doing a lot of duties, right? Or they're getting things done. It has to really be someone that... And it really just depends on how much you want to go, how deep you want to go here. Because for me, if I'm going to transfer lead to someone in that type of a situation where I'm no longer going to be lead, I want to make sure that this person has the same beliefs and the same fundamental core values that I do, not only for the alliance, but for the group and for the kingdom. Because it's not just about, hey, are you able to do these clicks and these tasks and capture some data for audits and send mails, etc. It's, do you really believe in what the goals are, right? And why we're here and why these players have joined this alliance. It's much bigger than just one person and or this individual that you are planning to give R5 to. Even when you're doing rotational R5s, you really have to make sure that they really believe. It's not enough for them just to say, oh yeah, I can do all these tasks and I'll be incredibly helpful. Great, right? Leave them as R4s. But if you're ever going to give someone R5, and I'm curious if anyone has ever been in a situation where you've rotated R5 and come to find out when you rotated it, you either didn't get R5 back or this person started, making claims and trying to take over, or just making their time that they spent as the rotational R5 almost contradictory to what the alliance has always been preaching, right, since day one. I'd be curious to hear. Let me know in the comments. So these are just really important things as I talk about to be cognizant of, to be aware of. Okay, then let's get here. Secondly, and this is surely what poses me the most problem, is that the officers themselves are not organized either and seem to act as a group, but they are not. Let me explain. This is such a spot-on assessment. I cannot tell you how important this is, that this happens so much more than I think some people think it does in kind of an average alliance that is not, let's just say, very well organized from day one. You're often going to see these things, or even in alliances you may think are organized. You'll see these things happen where it's, everyone's just kind of doing their own thing, or hey, do this, do that, do this, right? But they don't meet up. They don't have voice meetings. They may not even do officer management meetings. Right? Does the leader kind of give them a weekly agenda of tasks to do? Does he write out tasks and what those details are, and et cetera, et cetera? So funnily interesting that this person made that comment. I think it's a great point. He says, there is also among the title officers a person who is supposed to take care of the warlord title. I appreciate the enthusiasm of this person in the alliance, but he tries to play the boss without knowing it because he already had previous experience in leadership. So I completely understand, but he finds himself doing everything in the alliance without anyone being able to tell him anything. He controls all what the other officers should do and gives orders. Lol, for me, I know I like organization. I want to be in an environment where everyone does something. And I think the alliance will develop better like this if everyone also has had their place on what to do in the alliance, rather than one person trying to do some task and that other officers should do. Result, many are upset, and me too. Yeah. So this is kind of like the example of the alpha officer who kind of just, takes charge, or takes a little bit more charge. They're a little bit more assertive and outgoing. And when the leader's not there or whatnot, they may try, and it doesn't mean this happens all the time, but this can happen sometimes, and I've seen this. So they'll just start kind of trying to delegate and direct and say, yeah, I'm going to do this, you guys do this, or let's get this taken care of. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad way of doing it, but the thing to understand is that there's a certain way that you approach that type of situation. Remember, as fellow officers, these are your peers, right? So for me, I would never go into a situation as an officer and start bossing around or telling other officers what to do. What I would do is I would provide suggestions. I would provide, hey, here's my suggestion on what we can do based on what the leader has directed us. What do you think? And so you can do it like that, right? It's all about how you word things and how you come across to someone, where you kind of, one of the things I always talk about is you want to try and come across neutral. You want to be Switzerland, right? And how you talk to people and how you approach people, where you're not coming across too conservative or too aggressive, but kind of almost right in the middle, right? It's kind of like the porridge with the bears, Goldilocks, right? You don't want to be too hot, too cold. You want to be just right. And so, the way that you approach someone is really important to setting good first impressions, and then good tone and good pace in that relationship from the onset to however long you're going to be in that alliance. So again, taking this route that this person is saying his fellow officer is taking, I can understand, and I can effortlessly understand why he most likely feels that way based on what he's describing, because it just can be off-putting, right? This is someone who's at your same position, at your same title, and they're going around, and again, they may not feel that they're going around and bossing you, but you're taking it as that way. And that's a very real and understanding response for how an individual, in this case an officer, can feel. So yeah, I think it's really important that in that situation, you probably want to have a conversation with them and say, look, I understand that you may not be coming across, that you may not think you're doing this, but I want to let you know how me and some of the other people feel. I would really love for us to all work together and get on the same page, and maybe just start by asking or providing us an open-ended suggestion of your own, instead of it feeling more like you're ordering us, right? Because that's the thing, you never want to be in a situation where you are doing those things and then you almost immediately lose the respect of other officers, but then they don't tell you that. So something to keep in mind of. And then we get to the last part here, which is how can I talk to them about it so that they are more conscientious about it without hurting them or making me appear in their eyes as someone jealous when not at all. And also, if possible, could you tell me what exactly the role of the counselor consists of? What is really my role in this alliance? I'm really sorry for this long test, but I really want the good of this alliance. I'm at a point where I really feel left out in everything I do, where I easily appear to them as someone who will steal their place when not at all. I'm really lost, and since then, lack of self-confidence. I feel like I'm not enough in their eyes, maybe. I'm even thinking of stopping the game, and I really don't want it to be, because some things like that, thanks 1,000 times. So again, as I mentioned before, this person is very sincere, very earnest, very supportive, right? This is how this person who is asking me this question and has given us this long text on the situation that they're dealing with comes off to me. This is the type of officer I would want in my alliance. So let me, again, I know I've answered a little bit here. Let me start with the leader, right? With the leader, I think you have to have an honest conversation. And that's going to the leader and just saying, look, I just want to bring this to your attention, right? I don't know how much transition was done between the previous leader and yourself when you took over, and I think sometimes it's really important to maybe start with asking, what is their plan? Was there an agreement? Are you planning to continue what the previous leader did? Because really, you might need to find that out first and then decide if this is an alliance that you want to be an officer in or not. Because if the new leader's plan is to scrap the old leader's plan and maybe do their new plan, right? And on top of that, they're not willing to hear any feedback or hear anything as far as how you are feeling and how other officers are feeling. And sometimes that can be a good, appropriate way to approach it, is you go to them and say, hi, lead. I'm just using that generically. I wanted to just let you know and bring this to your attention that myself and a few of the other officers, are feeling a little perplexed or a little out of place since you've taken over. I know with the previous leader, they had done this, this, and this, and it really helped us when it came to how we organized. We've noticed that at this time, you have yet to do that, and we'd like to know, is there a plan to do that at all as far as helping us get organized or providing tasks, right? Is there a plan, is there anything in place to follow the current plan or the current plan that we know it, just because maybe there hasn't been a new plan that's been addressed? On top of that, if the player said that about the AOO situation, you can let them know, look, I'm happy maybe to rotate R5, or, again, if you feel that some of the other officers are there and again, they feel the same way, then maybe it's an opportunity to see if the current R5 can grow from that, right? And then as an officer, you can be supportive. Again, it really depends on how much they're doing or how much they're not doing. Right? If they're organizing and sending out, one of the things I would really recommend is watching my video on how to be a lead, right? So, I have a video on my channel. I think it's called a guide to being a leader for Rise of Kingdoms. I would strongly recommend watching that video and then sending that video to the lead. It's by far the most comprehensive and probably well done guide video that I've seen on the market for the RoK community. And that's not just me touting myself, that's me knowing what else exists out there and not being a slight to anyone else that's put anything out. I just am very confident and believe in my work. So I would recommend them watching that And then if they're still kind of at this loss, right, I would also recommend setting up a meeting, right? Getting into a voice meeting, preferably. Of course, worst case or fallback is text, but best case is voice. You get into a conversation and you just let them know how you're feeling, and let them know some of what you feel are some concerns or some worries of yours, and then see what the response is. Sometimes just having an honest conversation, and whether it's a one-on-one conversation or a conversation with the leader and the officers, and more often than not, voice really helps with this, in my opinion, can help mediate and really remedy a lot of those situations. Now, whether that be you come into the realization that that this alliance is probably just not for you anymore, and you need to go find another one. That could very much well be it. It could come to the conclusion that the lead's going to work on some things and start trying to get some things together on their end to help you guys feel better about yourself. Because why would he want to lose officers just to replace ones that may or may not be as experienced as the current ones, right? But maybe they could be more. And then option 3 is you stay and you just don't enjoy it there anymore. Or sorry, you stay and maybe he does make those improvements, right? And things end up going better. So the one thing I've always felt is the best starting place, as I mentioned, is to have a conversation, right? And to really organize your thoughts and then present them in that type of Switzerland-like way, right? You don't want to present things where it's, hey, I don't like that you're doing this. You need to do this better. Don't come across like that. You're not gonna get anywhere. All that's going to happen in the majority of times is that the player is probably going to get defensive and reclusive, and then they're going to recede into their shell, or they're going to feel like they're being attacked, and then they'll kind of counterattack back impulsively. So again, really approach it with some TLC, right? Some tender love and care, but that would be my recommendation. And again, to end this out, I'd really love to hear from any of you that have ever been in any of the situations, or you've seen the situations. Maybe you've even been someone who's done these things, and then you later realized that, that really wasn't the best thing for me to do. I'd love to hear. Let me know in the comments down below. That is it for me. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.